Welcome to Irish Illustrated Instant Analysis, brought to you by the RV Manufactured Housing Hall of Fame and Northern Indiana Event Center in Elkhart, Indiana. I'm Tim O'Malley, joined by Tim Priester of Irish Illustrated, and we are coming at you from our hotel rooms because the 11 a.m. local kickoff does not allow us into the stadium until after 9 o'clock. So we thought we'd get some information out as quickly as we could. And Tim, you just mentioned we were getting on. I feel like I've previewed this enough. Well, I felt like that for the Miami game too when we were doing it for 9 months, but we've got a lot of Arkansas preview in these last 8 days, it seems.
No doubt. And from an editorial standpoint, the way we're handling it now, I've got two stories. And so I feel like I've covered just about all of it. But I tried to think of some things this morning that, might come into play. And one of the questions from Manpig on our message board was about, what can they do? What's the next step here? What can they do to get better on defense? And I think they've done a good job of limiting the run in general, so they need to do that with Mike Washington. And then it goes without saying that you can't let Taylor Green run he's averaging 90 yards a game. You need to cut that in half. And then, you've got to get a pass rush, and it probably comes on the right side of the Arkansas line because Carmosa and Robinson on the left side are really, really good. Now, Traore's normally been lining up on Notre Dame's right side. I think that's correct, so they may want to move him around a little bit. And then on the back end, and Leonard Moore is probably to some degree is going to be limited. So, you're going to have to
If in at all.
if he plays at all. And so you're going to have to limit explosives. You're going to need, like, say, the athleticism of Dallas Golden to make a great play like he did last week. But this is not the opponent that you're just suddenly going to have a breakthrough defensively against the pass, especially without potentially without Leonard Moore, or even if he plays, he won't be at 100%. So, little victories along the way. Get a better pass rush, certainly probably on that right side of the line, and then do what you've done the last couple games. Limit the running back, and then Taylor Green's a little bit more difficult to limit. But if you can cut that 90 yards per game in half, I think now you're cutting into their point total pretty substantially.
I'm glad you reiterated the 90 yards and a half because it actually ties in with getting some pressure on him because unfortunately yards are still counted with sacks in college football. So if Taylor Green has 40 yards rushing at the end of this game, I am thinking they actually sacked Taylor
That's a
Green a
good
couple of
point.
times as well. JB sent me a text last night. I wanted to share that Arkansas actually scored, for people that don't know, Arkansas has scored 4 touchdowns in the first half of each of their 4 games this season, which is just a remarkable stat. You can win a shootout. I think we talked about that a little bit, Tim, where you were saying they're going to need more than 35, and I kind of agree with you now at this point. But you can't win a shootout where you're giving up 28 in the first half. I don't
No.
think you don't want to get the crowd that into it. Every moment of this red and white striped crowd that they have a big chunk gain against Notre Dame is going to reinvigorate them because they know they can score points. And there was one more sent over from Pro Football Focus by JB. This ties in directly to Leonard Moore, I think. Most targets without a drop this season. Omega Blake, Arkansas. 35 targets with no drop passes. And you know that in this situation, I think Norm's gotten better at that than they were last year, of course. But to score with them, Tim, I feel like you have to find some defensive footing well before halftime in this game. We keep talking about how they have found some defensive footing. They do stop the run. You cannot have that 21-point first half that Miami put on if you're not putting up points as well. It was just to be a tough environment to come back in.
I would agree with that, Tim. And this is a Mike Denbrock. There's pressure on him today because he
Yeah.
has to strike a balance between, running the football, which we think Notre Dame can do. We talked about time of possession during the week, and I'm not talking about just bleeding the clock, because you have C.J. Carr and you want to push
Yeah.
the ball down the field. You want to be aggressive. You want to be way more aggressive throwing the football than you did the last time you went on the road against Miami. But with C.J. Carr, and it's a fine line here, I realize that I'm kind of splitting hairs here. You want him to be aggressive, but you don't want him to, don't force something into double coverages either. Remember that you can check it down, and remember that your check down options are really, really good and explosive. So, I mean, it's C.J. Carr's got to think his way through some of these situations, but I think that Mike Denbrock has to still be aggressive, pick his spots. Notre Dame needs to win at the point of attack. That's a big defensive line for Arkansas. But I think that you can stymie them and let your two really good running backs pick and choose where they want to run. And we saw Memphis just decimate
Yeah.
Arkansas last week against the run with 294 yards. If Memphis can do that, Notre Dame can certainly do that.
Well, the most important game of that day by Memphis was right through the heart, the middle of Arkansas's defense. So you know it can be done. It was actually one of my talking points too, Tim, and who and what to watch is body blows, body blows, body blows. But you're right. See, you're still trusting CJ Carr because his ascent is clear since game one. But a few 4 minute, 11 play drives when Jadarian Price is finishing it off with a 9 yard touchdown, you're not exactly planning on it that way if you're Mike Tembrock, because if there's a shot there, you're going to take it. With Faison on and Malachi Fields and Jeremiah Love coming out in a wheel route, no one's going to complain if he has another 36-yard touchdown on a wheel route. Obviously, this game that goes quickly, but I totally agree with you. I can't remember the last time we thought Notre Dame has to bleed a clock when we're involved watching a game like this. We talked about this a little bit on the podcast. I would be shocked now in this game, especially after rereading your summer preview, if there's something on special teams is not planned for this game. And we talked about it in our last incident analysis that something was coming from Purdue as well, and it did. There's hay there's ground to be gained in this by Notre Dame being very aggressive in special teams.
Yeah, I mean this is tailor made for Marty Biaggi. There's a significant edge going into this. We talked during the week about Arkansas State had a 98-yard touchdown kick return, but the problem though is that the Arkansas's punter is also the kickoff man, and he's reached the end zone 18 out of 21 times. So I'm sure that's going to be a heavy emphasis that from Arkansas' standpoint that we need, touchbacks. But I want to add something here, Tim, about home field advantage. Who did I see? One of the national guys, I think it was Clapp, that said, about home field advantage for Arkansas. And it leads me to what, the quote from Ty Washington saying, look, if you jump on them early, the crowd will simmer down, and that will be that. And to your point, Tim, that hasn't been happening. It's been the other way
Right.
around, that Arkansas has been jumping on people. But I noted this somewhere in the preview in my prediction that they're 12-9 in 22 through 24. They're 12-9 at home, and among those 12 wins are Missouri State, Western Carolina, Kent State, Florida International, Louisiana Tech, and then this year 2 wins at home against Arkansas State and Alabama A&M. Now they had a huge upset against Tennessee at home last year, and then after that they lost 3 out of 4 and 4 out of 6. I don't know why Tennessee wasn't sharp that game. Maybe Arkansas just played really well, but their home field advantage really has not been significant against significant competition other than Tennessee last year.
I think it's their between the lines lacks the advantage more than the home field and crowd will though. I think
They're playing
it's a
SEC teams, yeah, at home.
yes, I think they're not as good as the teams they play. And we
Agreed.
were looking yesterday at lunch. We were looking at Arkansas' schedule. I had not. I
Yeah, it's
completely
brutal
forgotten.
coming up.
It is insane
Starting
coming up.
today.
What's going? Yes, I mean, not that you're putting all your eggs in one basket for Notre Dame, but I expect the home field to be an advantage. I just think Notre Dame has an advantage between the lines in this game. I think
Yeah.
that's. But I agree with you though that it's not a game where you say, boy, it's impossible to go in there and win. But I think it's because Notre Dame, other teams are better than Arkansas. And I think Notre Dame is better than Arkansas, save for a fatal flaw that I can't believe we're saying out loud so openly and so vociferously after 4 games. The pass defense. I've been on 4 radio calls down here and trying to say to everybody, you don't understand. They were the number one ranked pass defense for the last 2 years, not just last year. To see it drop off like this is amazing. But Tim, let's assume Leonard Moore doesn't play. Defensively, what does it look like for Notre Dame? What does success look like for Notre Dame? And of course, we talked about red zone. I still think that's a big part of it.
Well, guys like Christian, they're gonna go at Christian Gray. They would if Leonard Moore was on the field, or they'll go at Dallas Golden if he's on the field. They'll probably go at Devontae Smith if he's
Yeah.
on the field. We expect him to be back in action. I don't know. I mean, the safeties have to come up big. Don Schuler needs a pick in this game. A little bit of his veteran nature from
Yeah.
last year and early this year. He has to make a play. Jalen Strollman's been around for a long time. I know we talk about him being better against the run than he is against the pass, but all of that can take care of itself, Tim, if there's some pressure on the quarterback. And it's hard to pressure Taylon Green because he will escape a lot of that. But if you can get him looking at escape routes as opposed to downfield,
Yeah.
now you've got a chance. Now you're increasing the possibility of somebody in a secondary making a play.
I'll be fascinated to see the usage of Devontae Smith and Dallas Golden at nickel, hopefully in Congress, because I really believe this is a game with Taylon Green's size and ability. You want that fifth-year rugged veteran Devontae Smith involved a little bit, because it's
You know,
just
I don't.
because it's nickel doesn't mean it's pass.
No, no doubt. And I don't know if we said this in a podcast the other day or not. Carson Hobbs may have to get back involved again. And this was a guy that they counted on, whether that's at corner now, because I know he was getting reps at corner again. Whether it's there, it probably won't be at nickel with Devontae Smith back. But it's all hands on deck, and just to balance the scales a little bit. Kenai Walker, one of their two best cornerbacks. The other one, Julian Neal, number 23. I really like him. He's a good football player. But Kenai Walker didn't play last week, and I think is probably doubtful for this week. So on the flip side, that may be an area where C.J. Carr and Notre Dame's wideouts can attack.
I'll take a letter more on the field and let everybody come full strength, to be honest with you. But no, that's good. That's a good way to balance it out. We have a game to go to. We have a game to head out to. Obviously, we are not anywhere near there yet. For Tim Priester of Irish Illustrated, I'm Tim O'Malley. Thank you for watching and listening. Irish Illustrated Instant Analysis brought to you by the RV Manufactured Housing Hall of Fame and Northern Indiana Events Center in Elkhart, Indiana.